Anyway, uh, I wanted to quit. I need rest. I've been in the cage for like 10 years or more, and it was grueling. Then I came out, and it was the same thing. I was writing night and day. The sad thing is that I deleted a lot of it because of some jealous old man who started to attack my personal life. And yeah, he depicted me as some sort of a villain, a liar, a cheat, a crook, or something. While this was stuff that came out of my head. I've been reading ebooks since grade 10, right? So yeah, I've been reading ebooks. Sometimes I watch, especially anime, because albeit it's drawn, the context the context is very mature, even better than most movies. These guys are really good at that, including their mangas. And I'm sure someone out there understands. They are not like comics. I think comics are kind of dull compared to anime. Anyway, to get to the point. So yeah, I wanted to stop everything and just, when the day came, to just say, okay, it's done, let me go. But what I got was, where are you going? Come, you know, let's continue. So yeah, I rebelled because I'm not paid for this. Um, I don't get any reward. I don't get any accreditation. Right? It's like this open secret, and it eventually became people stealing my material, right? Hacking my phone and taking screenshots and what. So that basically just meant I stopped writing completely. I was demotivated. My medication, people started to mingle in my medication and made everything confused, to the point that I was unwell again, albeit I spent 2 years to get to a point where I was stable. So now I have to start over again because of some idiots. So that aside, I just wanted to sort of put out my personal frustration, because my environment isn't where I want it to be at the moment. Um, I think I'm still recovering from a lot of things. Uh, but what I can say is, uh, Namibia, the country, which has intellectuals that are not so uh, intellectual, and me, a supposed grade 12 failure or something, they despise because of what I taught myself, what I learned. If people want to brag about how many books they've read, well, then they haven't seen how many books were in my laptop, and then my other laptop, and then my sister's laptop, and then my other phone, and then this phone, right? So I don't count. I just take the knowledge as it should be. Yeah, it's supposed to be linear, but I'm just saying this so that the fact that I'm a person can be sort of acknowledged. That sure, I can make mistakes, but I'm not a bad person, as that man tried to depict me. He basically defamed me to the point where I couldn't help students at my former school. I couldn't go there or give a motivational speech or try to help them with study methods. I couldn't go to any school because this guy practically started accusing me of pedophilia and being a psychopath. And he's very, very lucky that I did not take him to court, right? So I want to scrap that. I want to scrap that out. It's not my fault that I can retain so much. It's how I was born, right? So Namibia has a gap between the haves and the have-nots. This gap is mostly in the north and at the coast. At the coast, it's because the coast has been divided. They have marked off certain areas for big companies to fish and have left a tiny, small area for the locals to also fish and make a living from that, because people from the coast in most places make a living from selling fish, but they can't do that because the big companies come, and the people that don't have the capital and the power are just pushed aside. That is why we have poverty. That is pure corruption, and it isn't addressed because most of the people that are involved in quotas were people that were high ranking in government. And what makes it worse is that they did not know that what they were doing was actually corruption, right? So it's not like they are bad people, evil, and they want to see people suffer. It's because they are blocked out from what's happening on the ground, that when some of their personal assistants or whoever does things for them does that, they only take the money, right? They are not actively involved as many people assume. So they, by proxy of the situation, are involved in corruption, right? And they didn't know. So them and a lot of businessmen and a lot of private investors are one of the biggest causes of poverty. And in the north, one of the biggest causes of poverty is Angola. I kept stressing how important it is for us to have a border that cuts off Angola, right? My dad is a soldier. He's been a soldier his entire life. He doesn't usually share things with me. If I ask him about something, he'll just shrug it off and tell me to go away, or he'll remind me about how he's not supposed to say something. But I got a word out from him. He's been to Sudan, and some correspondents that I have there, they speak pretty highly of him. And yeah, I spoke to them, to ask what he's doing there and so forth and so forth. And the people were really giving. The people really loved him there. Like, he would go to the markets to buy food, and they would give him food for free. And I'm talking a lot of food. And we're talking about an area that has a food scarcity. So that's true appreciation. Because of his leadership style as a soldier. I guess that rubbed off on me, although I'm not a soldier, and I wouldn't even consider that. I considered it once, but yeah, I won't entertain that lazy person. Anyway, so in the north, it's Angola. There's no border. Most borders are supposed to have a 30-kilometer radius where there's open space for 30 kilometers. If the other countries' people cross where that 30-kilometer border is, where it starts, then they are illegal immigrants, right? But if we go to the north, like when I went to Nkoronkuru and we went to the riverside, they are basically on the other side of the river, and there's someone that capitalized on this. He has a boat that transports people from Angola to Nkoronkuru in the north in Namibia. And most of these people are illegal immigrants. Some of them come from that side to come and do business here. Some of them come from that side to come and buy food here, like buying cattle, which is meat, and going away, and they are kind of privileged because they use US dollars as their currency. So when they come across, things are cheaper than they are in Angola. So their the, the lack of the border and the lack of control, as well as the lack of control in terms of livestock, about any livestock coming from that side being checked. And this is mostly in the Ovambo area where there is a clearance, there's no river where the cattle can just cross, right? And the people are not educated or informed about the fact that this is a border and what a border represents, and how this is a problem. It's a national security problem, and I don't understand how a country can just let that be, right? It's basically open. I mean, if Angola one day decides they want to invade us, they'll just do it. The restrictions will not mean that we are not cooperating with Angola anymore, or that we see Angola as a friend. No, the restrictions will mean, the border will mean that when we trade fairly. And since most of them are not used to caring for livestock, like the livestock in Namibia get vaccinated, right? But when they mix with those with the cattle from Angola, you end up with foot and mouth disease and all of that stuff, which renders these cattle useless. And in turn, it makes the owners poorer because their cattle don't have value anymore, and they are demotivated to farm because they don't see the income coming in. Because when you cross the red line at Mululani, you will notice that as you go along and you go to Mitco, and when they have those auctions, you will see what these cattle are selling for, and you see what yours is selling for. But you cannot take your cattle and bring it across the border, so you're trapped. When you're trapped like that, and the people around you see that you're trapped, what will they do? They will go to the side where they think there is prosperity. So when they go across the red line to go find prosperity, the only thing that they take with them is poverty. And they come here and they end up being used for what you can call slave labor, low wage payments, right? They get abused because a lot of those companies do not heed the laws of the country about minimum wage, and the minimum wage needs to rise. It is a must if we are serious about things like poverty reduction, because the money is there, right? But the owners of most companies don't think that the workers are deserving, because they see them as, they are replaceable, right? It's like, if you don't want to work, go away, we'll find someone else. This in fact happened in Okahanja when some of the people went on strike at Toto, and some went on strike at Shell, because they wanted increased wages and less time. You stand there for what, 7-8 hours or more, and even at night you're there, you barely have sleep, and you have to get peanuts. You get peanuts for for your time, and it's your time you're giving. And the people in Windhoek also went on strike, people at service stations. What happened? They were all fired. And within a day there were new people who took over their jobs. So there is absolutely no job security, and they lacked a union. And the thing is, if one or anybody else wants to start a union to represent these workers, to tell them what their rights are, uh, to 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 um to sort of explain the law of the land to them, those unionists will end up being harassed by the managers and the whatevers that work for those service stations and so forth. So being harassed like that because those people don't want to lose their positions, when they see that someone is not humbled by them merely because they have pale skin, and yeah, another reminder, this is Namibia, there is racism. So you go and you go to the source, which is what we did. And this is something that will eventually reach those who are surrounded by yes men, the billionaires, about the working conditions that their proxies in in Namibia, how the working conditions are. And with that, to also protect the workers when they are fired or dismissed for simple reasons, right? That can then be reported to the real headquarters. And if South Africa is reluctant, then you go even higher. And now we can. But that is not the priority at the moment, right? One step at a time, one thing at a time. I forgot to put in the monopolies, the shop rights, and all of those others. Uh, just patience. Things take time. They need to develop, and as they are developing, there needs to be a foolproof plan, because those guys have a lot of money and they have hundreds or 50 lawyers that are helping them, that are representing them, and some of us are on our own, right? So back to the lack of the border, uh, this absolutely confusing lack of you know defending our nation. I mean, it's a national security issue, and the people who are now melancholy because of the way things are going, they're just becoming poorer and poorer, because there used to be a time when it was all green, right? You could just plant and eat and it was okay. People were living on the land. But global warming has impacted even Namibia, because the seasons are changing, and with that, the farmers need to adapt. The rural farmers need to adapt to planting, um, not seasonal planting, but adapt to things like weather patterns and so forth. And that can be done by the government and the weather bureau, and this will also give the weather bureau something else to do, other than waiting for the 8 o'clock news and report. So that will bring them also into this fight against poverty, because when the North starts to thrive, the North is the one that's going to bridge the gap. Narrow the gap. That is the North. And if there is a border, and at some point it starts being established that people start to see the value of their kraals, of the cattle within them, that will lead to prosperity. But it all starts with very difficult things, like the case for closing the Angola border is a bit difficult because of the Okavango River. Because on one side of the river is Namibia, on the other side is supposedly Angola. But this needs research to actually see whether the river belongs to both Angola and Namibia, or whether the river belongs to Namibia, depending on the area where the river flows. So this is the investigation. This is what I went to the north to try and establish. I spoke to a lot of people, but I have family there, so ended up speaking about family. But I did walk around and ask a few people questions. Even though my native Rukwangari is horrible, as I was told, but I tried, and I did learn a lot. For one, the people are very, very hardworking, but at the moment there is no work. And when I say there's no work, I'm not saying they should go build malls there, because those are useless jobs. I'll say it right now, those are useless jobs, as opposed to these people cultivating their land and actually growing a lot of food, having a lot of cattle that they can barter for money. They will not need to go buy tomatoes and onions in the shops, or potatoes, if they are making them, planting them themselves. And there is room for that. But the only thing that isn't there is the platform to actually say this to the people. The funding needed to be sent to the north, right? And establish or start to establish that sense in order to to eradicate poverty, because that's where it starts. The way people are looking at life right now, it's like they are giving up. I think it was yesterday or the day before, my grand uncle passed away. I was at the funeral with him, my grandma's funeral. I was with, and I didn't expect that. He looked fit, and I totally didn't expect that. But that's what's happening, because the older people are being overworked. There is no pension for them, right? They have to work in order to survive. They are not working just because. And the youngsters are too busy drinking because they don't see the value in the land. I didn't see one field that was fertilized. And the only thing I could remember is across the road is one of my grandfather's land. It has a lot of water. Like if you start to dig, you can dig boreholes there. It is wonderful. And when my grandfather was still alive, he used to plant corn, mahangu, watermelon, pumpkins. And when the time came and we went back and we would run around in the field, you can just literally run around, come across a watermelon, pick it up, hit it on the ground, open it up, and eat it with your hands. Yeah, sure, I was a kid back then, so that was okay. But I'm just saying the difference now. Now it's completely empty. There is nothing there, because now people don't they don't value farming anymore, right? And they don't see that commercial farming basically means bartering your livestock or your crops for money, which is totally doable. As a matter of fact, the North will outwork the so-called commercial farms. But like I said, the funding is not there. And the people that they do send there, the me copies are horrible. They just want money, and they want political positions, right? So things are not going. The war on poverty is being waged on the wrong things. It should not be the war on poverty. It should be the march towards prosperity. And to all my other African brothers and sisters, you know me. We are together. I is we is I. Salute.